Hello, everyone, and welcome to Can You Hear Me? I'm Eileen Rochford. I'm the CEO of the Harbinger Group, which is a marketing and strategy firm.
And I'm Rob Johnson, president of Rob Johnson Communications. On this podcast, we try to find subjects that are current, relevant, that will be top of mind at your company. Today's topic, why short form video is so dominant. This addresses one of the major themes for digital marketers everywhere. How do you break through with consumers and customers when there is noise everywhere? You know, if you've been in the marketing game forever, Eileen, you know this. Whether it was digital or pre-digital, it's always like, how do we get people's attention? And now with attention spans being what they are, with social media being what it is,
That's right, Rob. It's an entirely new world in so many ways. It's funny how, every 6 months you wake up and you feel like, whoa, that's changed even more. And now video, it's been dominant for a while, but this short form video, it's almost as if making longer form content, the real reason that you do it is so that you can cut it down into your short form video.
That is interesting you would say that, because we're going to talk about that a little bit later with people who are creating the longer form content and how you can chop it up. So
that's right.
I want to kind of tease ahead to that. That's going to be part of this discussion, but it is a real thing. You make a really, really great point.
Yeah. So let's get to an interesting Forbes article that we saw on this topic, and it was authored by Don Dobbs. He's the founder of M16 Marketing. So he wrote about the dominance of short form videos. And he said, and I'm going to quote him here, "We can largely attribute the success of short-form video to the fast-paced nature of online consumption. With attention spans shorter than ever, content that is quick to engage and easy to digest is more likely to capture and retain viewer interest. Short-form videos cater to this by delivering content in bite-sized pieces, making it easier for users to consume, enjoy, and share."
A really great point.
Thank you to Don. Appreciate that. He wrote a great piece on this topic, so he's given us quite a bit to talk about.
And he really, if you're looking for sort of a little bit of a thesis of what we're doing here, that's it right there. And you see people all the time that want to get in the video game, and the thing is, they might have ideas about what they want to do, but I'm always with clients who are doing this, I'm always saying, you got to be short. You got to be, the time has got to be very limited, because you only have a certain amount of time to break through with everybody.
And therefore, in a really short period of time, I would imagine that structure is critical to the success of the content, that you create. Would you agree? Because you're really much more closer to video production than I am, Rob.
Right. I would say, just some of the client work that I've done, and you'd start off with, a YouTube program for one of the clients we work with, you and I work with.
Right.
And it was like, start off as like 10 minutes. Then we're like, no, let's go down to 5. We're still there 5 on YouTube and LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. But when you start talking about cutting up those assets, as we've already kind of touched upon, and we're going to get into a little bit later, it's very important to make sure that they're short, because that's just what people want right now. Mm-hmm. And the duration keeps getting less and less and less. I'd hate to see where we are in 6 months. Like you said, you wake up and it's like, all right, you got to say everything in 15 seconds. What?
Yeah. In short form now, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say, to your point, it does have to have structure. You have to, like, when you sit there and think about what you have to say, I have to get to that. I have to get to that. And I have to get to that. I'm not going to be able to provide a lot of color around it. I'm just going to be able to share that.
Right.
So you got to get right to it.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the differences in several formats, but from what I have read from lots of experts out there, the hook at the start of your short form content is arguably the most important part, because if people are going to stick, you've got to get them past the 5-second mark. Anyway, so the hook, as in, I don't know who needs to hear this, but things like that. There's a whole list of hooks that I'll connect in the show notes, but the hook is critical. Your opener.
It is. Well, this Forbes article also goes on to say that TikTok, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts are now the front runners in the digital marketing space. So something like TikTok, which is famous for its, say, viral dance videos or the ubiquitous challenges they seem to have all the time, it now hosts all types of creative content, from, say, educational videos to brand storytelling. One of our future guests on this program told me about his TikTok that he's doing. I'm sure we'll ask him about it when we have him on in the next episode or two. And he is a professional adult. You're like, and he said said, it's taken off. And so it's really interesting. And, Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts have also followed the TikTok, wave. But the key for all of them is they must be short. And there's no magic number. Certainly under a minute is critical. I think Instagram Reels gives you a minute and a half, but I would highly recommend maybe 30 to 45 seconds. When I do videos, I do the thought of the day maybe once a week, and I always try to keep it to 30 to 45 seconds. My wife, Stacy, does this DIY little thing on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook called Styles by Stacy J. And we're always like nothing over 45 seconds. When she started doing it, it would be like, hey, I'm going to show you this and that. And she'd have a little color around it. It could run 2.5, 3 minutes, and it wasn't getting engagement. And the minute she dropped it under a minute, the engagement skyrocketed. So
that's great.
It's not only things I've done with my clients, but little projects I'm working on personally or working on with my wife.
Yeah, that's very true. And it intrigues me how to credibly apply this tool, the short form video, to executive visibility and thought leadership, right? Even in a LinkedIn platform, because we are seeing that much more often on LinkedIn as well. We haven't addressed that, but short form really does lend itself to TikTok, et cetera, as you've noted. But we are seeing it more and more on LinkedIn. So that's something that we could discuss as well.
And even though we're bringing up some of these other these other social media channels, the LinkedIn thing cannot be understated. And I think we're going to put it into a nice little bow toward the end of this, because we were teasing forward the idea of taking a longer form and making it shorter form. And that's exactly the perfect place to do it, is like a LinkedIn. And so I think it's going to make sense to people, but we're kind of running it through the garden right now in terms of different concepts. But your point about LinkedIn is absolutely spot on.
And when we do talk to the usage of short form in thought leadership and executive visibility, et cetera, and how to maybe do that credibly on LinkedIn, we have a bunch of ideas, thought starters for our listeners who do tend to be more like the executive communications folks or executive leadership folks, things that prompt some ideas for you. So hang in there. We're going to get to some good ideas for you.
Yes, we are.
But we also want to mention that Forbes article one more time, because Don went into some detail about legacy social media channels being still highly, highly relevant. The article indicated that on Facebook, 80% of Facebook stories that incorporate sound or voiceovers tend to drive better lower funnel results. And on Instagram, 91% of Instagram users watch videos on the platform at least weekly, which is good. Mm-hmm. Twitter video content significantly enhances engagement as well. The data shows that with tweets containing video, they get up to 10 times more engagement than those without. And of course, on YouTube, 74% of consumers use the platform. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. 74%. It's also, I think, the second largest search engine now in the world, which is kind of interesting. And users on YouTube are twice as likely to purchase after viewing a product in a YouTube video. And my credit card can attest to the fact that Instagram probably drives some insane amount of consumer purchasing because that's where I'm getting all of the requests from my 19-year-old daughter who's in college. Hey, mom, I really need this. Like every other day. Like, can you just get off Instagram,
take
please?
a look at the credit card bill and you go, let's see, where's this headed? Oh, Instagram.
I am for Instagram. Leave my daughter alone.
What's interesting about it's really funny. What's interesting about YouTube, when you mentioned 74% of consumers use that platform, I mean, that's just overwhelming. That's a huge number. But it also occurs to me that a lot of times when, we didn't have it when we were younger, we're like, well, how do you do that? Or how do you make that? Or how? And you go, let's go to YouTube, right? Yeah. And so you go to YouTube. But what I do now is I'm looking for the shorter videos. If somebody has a 7-minute how to set up something or how to make something work, and I see one that's a minute and a half or 2 minutes, I'm always going to the minute and a half or 2 minutes. So it's point well taken relative to that particular issue as it relates to YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Also, the keywords that you use in describing what is in your video and what you're covering, if those aren't spot on, that's also going to affect your performance, no matter how short it is, because you and I, at least we'll say maybe the over 40 set conclusively will read the description first. So
yes.
Anyway, think about your demographic.
The other thing, but taking that a step farther too, Eileen, is when you have the hashtags, when you're telling people what's in it. I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. You cannot have, I see people like post like 50 hashtags on something. Right. And at least for LinkedIn, and I assume on some of the other ones, if you post 50 of them, it's going to just kind of toss it out the window. I think the sweet spot HubSpot is like 3 or 4 really good hashtags.
For sure.
So people think, oh, I want it to be all things to all people. So I'm going to put 50 hashtags down. Not a good idea.
It's funny on Instagram, you still see that all the time. I mean, you could see a list of 20, 30 hashtags. It's interesting. I wonder when that shift is going to occur, because the algorithm on LinkedIn is already kind of penalizing you for that.
It is.
Yeah. So that is interesting. I wonder when all the people making, decent amount of money and sometimes obscene amount of money as influencers on Instagram are going to have to change that behavior. We'll see where that goes.
So we've talked about this already, and now's the time that we want to kind of dig into it a little bit deeper and kind of include the whole LinkedIn component to it. But the concept in the article that talked about taking longer form content like blogs, keynote speeches, even longer corporate videos, for instance, and trimming them down for use on the aforementioned platforms in smaller, digestible chunks. So that means you have lots of content that can be repurposed in a way that will be appealing and consumed by different audiences that may like it shorter. So I love this idea for LinkedIn. So I see people post maybe a white paper or a blog or something, and it's longer. And it's like, okay, that's fine. I'm not sure everybody's going to read that. But if you did video and picked out 3 or 4 highlights from it and made each one of those short videos, you would have content for a while. And the same person I was talking to yesterday, who is trying to kind of bolster his thought leadership on LinkedIn, I was like, we can totally take your sort of more technical, bigger thing and boil it down into 4 separate things. And you know what we could do? We could release one of those a week and give you a month's worth of short form content. I still want you to do the long form stuff, but the short form content, and see how that works.
Yeah. It also will keep sustained interest. So it's not just the performance of the individual video to keep in mind when you're thinking about this strategy.
Right.
It's that you're giving yourself, as you put it, the series of maybe a month's worth of weekly or even more content. But by doing that, you're sustaining engagement and while growing your audience at the same time. So it is a very useful tool. And always just stop entirely, I think, is the advice about, or thinking about a video as a single entity in and of itself that delivers, one specific value. Just stop it, because it is such a waste of money all around. So any organization that's investing in making, professional grade video in particular, if you're not getting, a couple dozen different shorts out of that to use in your campaigns on whatever platform you're on, you're totally not squeezing the value out of it that you should be. No doubt about that.
And it's just a different way of thinking about it. And as opposed to, oh gosh, I got to create all of this content.
No,
the answer
you're doing
is
it once.
You can just create the longer form stuff and then take the highlights from your longer form and chop it up, for lack of a better term, into the shorter, as I call them, digestible chunks. And all of a sudden the world doesn't seem so big, right? If you're sitting there going, oh, I've got this long form thing, and then I need to come up with a bunch of short form. It's like, you really don't, but you do have to present it in a little bit different way, a little bit more pithy, energetic kind of way, especially if you're going to do videos. You're going to take, say, a blog and make it 4 different short video pieces. There's going to be some different, performance related issues that are there.
Yeah. I equate it to almost like, you probably don't do this, but I totally do. And I know probably hundreds of thousands of people espouse to meal prep. So once a week, you do your grocery shopping, you plan your meals, you get 5, different kind of stock items in your refrigerator, and then you deal them out like cards, right? And you make a whole variety of meals throughout your week, and it gets you to the following Saturday or whatever, when you get to go out to dinner that night. But the idea is you're making you're putting in the investment of time to kind of eke it out in a variety of ways throughout the course of the next week. I equate it to that as a way of thinking about content production.
So if we're using that analogy, by the Friday dinner,
when you're really sick of the chicken,
the third or fourth video that shorter video you've done, you're like, oh, thank God I put in all that work earlier in the week, or earlier in this process.
Because you're just popping it in the microwave and then kicking up your heels.
There you go.
That's right.
You just made it entirely understandable to a whole generation of people that need to eat.
Right. I think that's all of us.
That's all of us. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about a couple of things related to LinkedIn for a sec. So again, for our listeners who are in kind of executive leadership positions or who are working in the executive visibility space, there's a whole lot of ways that people who you might not think about, this CEO, oh gosh, my CEO doesn't have time to do video. Is it really worth their while? How is it actually going to bolster their brand? Well, there's a lot of information available now that we've that probably most of us are familiar with, that personalizing your communications is critical to your credibility and just the success and the performance of it. I think it was the HubSpot 2024 Marketing Trends Report. I'll put this in the show notes too. There's a whole section in there that backs up that you've got to make it personal. There's no better way as a person who's in an executive leadership position in an organization to make your communications personal than through the use of video, in my opinion, particularly short form video, because it's almost the easiest, to do it. So let's throw out some ideas to get you thinking, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Perfect segue. Yes.
Thanks. Let's throw out some ideas. So if you haven't thought about doing an Ask Me Anything series, maybe once a week, once a month kind of thing, it's so easy. Just you or whoever manages your social, do a poll about things that maybe your customers might be curious about when it comes to your industry or your space, or something that you particularly have a niche in that you know a tremendous amount about. Give them some options and ask them to post your questions. So then take the questions that you like and answer them. And in 30 to 45 seconds, you have a nice piece of content, and you can tag the person, or multiple people who may have asked a similar question. Just say, here I am again doing my monthly Ask Me Anything. Here's the question that we chose this time. Dig right in. I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm going to tell you all about such and such. So,
and it also shows great subject matter expertise, right? So it's
Totally.
somebody asking you a question, they're relying on you for the answer.
Yeah.
And so you're able to show personability, you're showing your subject matter expertise. It's all a win for you if you decide to go down that path.
Yeah, great. Great points. Good ads. So here's a couple more that I like, try these on for size. Behind the scenes moments type of series. So more than likely in your job, you're doing some things that people only see the finished product of. Maybe it's a presentation. Maybe it's you shared the United Way, regional gala that year. Mm-hmm. Well, gosh, a heck of a lot of work went into that. So maybe you do, you speed it up behind the scenes, and you do a bunch of segments that show, here's how we got to raising the $5 million in the Dallas-Fort Worth area this year, etc. Things like that. So behind the scenes, or things related to, maybe you have an annual conference, and maybe the only thing that your employees see or your sales force see are when they are sitting in that giant auditorium and you're all having your convention. But leading up to it, there were a lot of things. How you got ready to make your keynote, how you chose the topics, how you chose the theme, anything like that. Take your pick, but it could be a really cool behind the scenes opportunity. And again, you're just showing them much more of your own personality, which is really the most important part. Because
and everybody loves to take a look behind the curtain, and that's what you're providing as well. You're showing that human touch, but you're also saying, hey, you didn't get a chance to see this on stage. Here's what was behind the stage, and that's kind of cool.
Also, you can show your flaws. How much did it take you to rehearse? That just gets to, I'm a real person, and that lends to credibility.
People love that.
Yeah,
they love that.
Yeah, for sure, as they should. If you travel a lot as an executive, maybe you're hitting lots of different stores or corporate offices. Take your pick. But when you're on the road, kind of just messages from the road, like, here's what I picked up in the Southeast region this week, and I want to give some, pats on the back to X, Y, and Z. Whatever. You're just sharing. I'm on the road. Here's what I learned. But I've seen some of that, and I love those. I love to see, particularly CEOs who have to travel a lot. It's kind of interesting to kind of get a peek at what is that like, and what do they learn when they do it. So again, nice little tool there. Another thing to think about is, while you're doing that traveling, kind of a day in the life with your customers. What do you spent the day with some of your customers in whatever capacity? And again, what'd you learn? Did you learn something else about their needs? And what kind of ideas did that spark? Or what are you going to take back to talk about with your team? Things like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So those are some of the ideas that I had. And I think that might help people kind of look at it from the perspective of, so how do I incorporate short form as more on the corporate side, and particularly in leadership roles, because it is doable. You just have to decide you'd like to do it and pick up one that feels right, for you, kind of your brand, and particularly your company too.
And there's a couple of other things that are important to think about as we kind of wrap this up. And that's showing, an inspirational story, showing empathy, or it might be making sure that whatever you do is authentic to you. It doesn't need to be cookie cutter. It needs to be authentic to you. So if you think about those two things as well, I highly recommend that, because we talk about empathy in other kinds of forms and fashions here, Eileen, but when it comes across on video, the empathy, it's even more powerful powerful. And then you don't want to do it like somebody else. When you do these videos, you want to do them like you do them. And that's authenticity.
Totally. Even when it comes to some of these trends, like these, hugely, wildly popular challenges that you mentioned earlier,
right?
On TikTok, for example, you might really want to get involved in that, but you've got to stop first and ask yourself, does this fit? Sure. Even if it is, exciting, memorable, huge, rating, clicks, possibilities, you've got to answer the question that you already noted, Rob, about authenticity. Does it fit your brand? Is it really the right choice for you? And if it is, awesome, go for it. There's no reason why you shouldn't, but there are probably more reasons why, you don't want to just hitch your wagon to the latest thing than there are reasons to do it. So just be thoughtful about that.
And if you're, and really one last thing I want to bring up too, relative to what you were just talking about, is chasing clicks. Because I had a client recently tell me about, they do lots of videos that are on brand with them. They're in the real estate industry, and they have a really unique kind of cadence that they do. But one of the people put out a video, 30-second video about his dog, and it got tens of thousands of views. And it was like, oh my God, we went viral. He went viral with the dog video, which has nothing to do with the business. So the good news is, hey, we went viral. And then all of a sudden you go viral and you go, well, I want to go viral again. If you're sitting out there trying to figure out how you're going to go viral, you're probably not going to go viral. The other thing too is how much was it really worth to have this whole thing? Now, does it make you relatable? Yes. Does it show some of the things we're talking about? Yes. Is it going to help you with your business? I would say no.
No, it helps you for awareness to a certain degree.
True.
And then people are on to the next thing.
Go viral again. Who doesn't want to go? Everybody wants to go viral. But if it's off brand, is it really helping you? So
that's for sure. Particularly if it's contradictory to your brand, then it's really never a good thing. Yeah.
Sure.
All right. So our friend Don Dobbs had some other points that we could just run through. Yeah. What do you say?
Yeah.
Shall we do it? Okay. So he had some final good advice for making short form video actionable. Understand your audience is number one. Yeah. So gather insights by whatever means, works for you. Surveys, social media analytics, etc. Just make sure you kind of are aware of their needs, their preferences, pain points, all those good things. But we all know that's the first thing you ever do.
Right.
Secondly, utilize authentic storytelling. We talked about authenticity. So making sure it fits you. Also, make it real. You don't want to, have actors portraying your stories. Make sure it's, yourself or other people within your organization, and incorporate maybe things like customer testimonials. And we talked about behind the scenes content, kind of how we did it, secret stuff, which is always fun and kind of brings people into your fold. Third is to inspire and relate. So showcase successes by sharing stories of overcoming challenges that align with your brand values. And we talked about demonstrating empathy. The last thing I think that he mentioned, which we'll toss out there too, is good production is, it's important, but you don't have to do that over authenticity. So if it's going to be a little grainy, if it's going to be someone who's not perfectly articulate, maybe they stumble a tiny bit in their words. So what? It's more important to have authenticity than it is to have high production quality, I believe is the point that he was trying to make. So I think that's about it. Do we agree?
Yeah, I think that last one's really important too, because you think, oh, I'm going to have this edited and it's going to look slick and this and that. And if that's your audience, if that's who you're trying to appeal to, then yes, go ahead and do it. But there's a lot of, you're talking about the sort of simpler, more authentic kind of videos. If that's going to appeal to your audience, that's what you should be doing. So I think that's the point there. And it's a great one.
And you know why it's important to particularly our, executive leadership listeners and those who do executive visibility, it's because the pressure's off in the way that it normally would be there for people in positions of leadership in companies that help represent brands externally. In short form video, the purpose is to be real. It is to get to know the person and hence the organization in a much more credible way. So you can do it more easily, and you can do it on your phone camera. You don't have to make this, a giant.
It's very simple. Yep.
Yeah, video shoot and all of the things that go along with that are a big pain. So they're worth it for the right reasons, and especially if you're able to get a ton of content that you can chop up. But you don't have to go that route to make this possible. It's totally attainable for you. Just give it a try. Be real and give it a try.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that's going to do it for our latest edition of Can You Hear Me? I'm Eileen Rochford. And if you guys would like to weigh in on the podcast, maybe give us an idea for another topic that you'd like us to tackle on a show, just drop us a note on the Can You Hear Me podcast page that's on LinkedIn.
And I'm Rob Johnson. If you like this show, please consider giving us a review on any of the platforms where you can find Can You Hear Me? We're talking Apple, Spotify, and more. Your reviews help other potential listeners find our show. Thank you so much for listening.